Hey guys, welcome back to another Q&A on September 30th, 2020. So, well, today's September 30th. Probably see this on the 31st or maybe the 1st. Is there even a 31st in this month? No, there's not even a 31st in this month. So, yeah, you'll see it soon. Anywho. All right. Let's jump over here. Enlighten us on GW or Cardarine. What the fuck is it? What does it do? How to implement? And somebody says, do you think it's worth implementing in the off season to try to stay leaner? This is what I was going to try to use it for. Okay, well, in short, it's a PPAR agonist, also known as GW, oh God, I might get it wrong, 5106 or 6, I don't know. Anywho, it does several things. I know there was a lot of research done originally in its use and or benefits towards metabolic syndrome, so helping lower triglycerides, improve blood glucose, and all these things. And also, it seems to reduce fat mass or at least like alter fat oxidation. So it may also have some benefits on like overall metabolic rate, so like calorie wasting, right? I mean, obviously, you could use it in a fat loss phase if that's what you wanted to use it for. It could potentially be beneficial to somebody trying to resensitize or someone with metabolic type syndrome, like high triglycerides, high blood glucose, high insulin levels, so on and so forth. But, you know, there's been, I believe it was pulled out of research with no like actual human use or approved for human use or anything like that I'm aware of. It could be wrong. I'm not 100% sure on that. But there was the scare of cancer risk, and it's showing, and I believe this was probably, I believe it was in a rat model, but showing like increasing cancer risk in a pretty short period of time, which was not good. Another one that I saw was something along the lines of it increasing the lifespan of breast cancer cells and like in a study. So I mean, that's obviously not something that you want to mess around with. Now, there's been a lot of people trying to debunk the cancer portion of it, mainly by looking at it dosage in relation to human dosages. Okay, so whether that portion is true or not, it's probably, you know, is there a dose relationship there? Yeah, I mean, just like anything, there's probably a dose relationship. You know, the poison's always going to be in the dose, but something to consider. You might want to look into more research on that yourself, make an educated decision. This question about off-season, I mean, yeah, I get like potential benefit and staving off some of the downsides, like some of the alterations in your lipid panel and blood glucose and all that. I could see that part being beneficial. I'd also say, like, how much food do you need to eat? You know, if you're burning extra calories, like, I really wouldn't want anything in there that's burning calories. Like me personally, I want absolutely nothing that's going to burn any extra calories or alter my metabolic rate. Unless it's going to slow my metabolic rate down, keep it away from me, you know, because there's a lot of other tried and true ingredients and pharmaceuticals and over-the-counter things and all this stuff, depending on what people want to use, that could accomplish, you know, maintaining better lipid profile, maintaining better insulin sensitivity, so on and so forth. So I would say probably not for that purpose. It sounds like on paper that it could work for that, but I guess it would, again, just depend on like the amount of food the person needs to eat, and are we just kind of like running them in circles? You know what I mean? So, yeah, there you go. Who is your favorite client and why did you choose me? Oh, God. I'll take care of that on the update. Don't worry about this one, guys. He will receive proper punishment on the update. This particular person's eating quite a bit of food, so I'm just going to go ahead and double his food come update time. And then he'll definitely cry. So let's move on. Would love to hear your thoughts on some of the late Paul Borenson, I think that's how you say his name, methods. I know not a question per se, but more so thoughts on diminishing returns on high doses of gear versus Paul's claim of his short, high-intensity cycles. I don't know all of his stuff by heart. I do know that he did advocate shorter-term, higher dosages, and talked about downregulation. Now, the problem is most of the research and literature points towards an increase in receptors over time in response to more androgens. So, and there's also not really anything showing us that there is downregulation, at least not in the research. So I don't think that that's really a thing. We've talked about that on some of the podcasts too. Now, the point of diminishing returns obviously is going to be other things on your health, right? Just overall health, like what you're willing to do to yourself. And then also systemic stress. I think systemic stress is a reason that people stop seeing progress as dose escalates up because their body gets too stressed out. And then with that, it starts to cause some downstream effects. So sleep, training performance, appetite, the list goes on. So I don't know if it's so much a downregulation, like a receptor downregulation issue, as much as it is a systemic stress and your body's really stressed out issue. So now my problem is that the process of this receptor process of, increased receptors, and then this also process of just general hypertrophy is a slow process. So it makes more sense to me for more controlled, longer duration as a means to grow muscle, at least from a mechanistic standpoint, and also just a general, knowing how muscle grows, and then also, like I said, the research on downregulation and receptors. So that's just kind of my take on it. There's probably a reason too that that didn't really catch on, and a lot of people don't really use that much anymore that I'm aware of. So, all right. If an AI is needed, Remodex or Femera, which is a better option? Oh man. Well, my question I'm always going to play devil's advocate on this one. Like, why is an AI needed? If you need to decrease, estradiol or total estrogen levels or whatever, then just aromatize less. So just change the compound selection for less aromatization. And you don't need any of that. You don't need to add another element in there that's going to have other negative downstream effects, and potentially not only negative downstream effects, but also some negative health risks. Talked about this in the podcast with Scott Howell recently. You go check that out. OPD podcast with Scott Howell. So just lower the amount of aromatizing compound down, and then there's less aromatization, there's less estrogen. So whatever problem that you are having here will be gone or diminished or whatever, because you just don't have, that's the easiest way to do it, right? And probably the safest way and most practical way. Now, there could be an instance like right before a show, you want to lower it a little bit more, estradiol a little bit more, kind of artificially. Okay, either option in that case is going to work. It's just a slippery slope of like how much do you want to drop it down before it has some negative effects on your actual physique, right? So, but there wouldn't really be, like in a short case like that too, it's not really going to be one that's better. It's more so dose. Fermera or letrozole, like they call it, it's often considered a little bit stronger, but Arimidex is strong. I mean, by itself, like people don't realize how much these things how much and how quick they'll drop your estrogen and aromatization down. Like it's fast. It happens quickly. So it does not take that much. So yeah, either really, but I'm not sure what the reason would be to use it. And like I said, in most cases, you could just alter the compounds and then you could accomplish the same thing. All right, let's move over. Facebook. I think I just got another question on here actually. Let's see. Maybe. Where did it go? Oh yeah. Maybe not. Okay. When you're pushing food to grow and consuming massive amounts of macros, what adjustments and considerations do you make to ensure proper intake is met while balancing insulin sensitivity, digestion, and inflammation? It's a great question. So generally the answer to this is going to be eat mostly whole foods, eat things that agree with your digestion. Those are going to be the keys to proper digestion, which is also going to aid in keeping inflammation at bay, which will also help with insulin sensitivity over the long run, right? Now, when we talk about like massive amounts of food to where it's really pushing us, hunger's basically non-existent, we're really struggling to get it in, so on and so forth, that changes the dynamic a little bit, and you got to kind of throw some of the rules out, or at least the rules change, right? I still don't want to eat, I'm still not going to suggest anything that's going to wreck the digestion, but the idea that you're going to be able to eat 900 or 1,000 grams of carbs with all jasmine rice and potatoes is just probably, even if you could, it's probably not going to be beneficial just for the simple fact that you're going to wreck your GI. So, start adding in some processed food is okay, but add in processed food that's easy to digest, that isn't overly ingredient rich, that has a bunch of things in there that's going to cause issues. So like I add the gummy bears, right? One of the reasons I use specific gummy bears, the Haribo or Haribo or whatever you want to call them, is they're glucose based. Glucose is easy to digest. Yeah, there's a little bit of coloring in there, but it's mostly just gelatin and glucose. It's really easy to digest. So, yes, it's processed, but it's also simple. And that's why like simply adding things like carb powders that we already use intra-workout could be added to a meal. Mix it in a little bit of water, sip on it while you wash down your food. It's disgusting, it's whatever, but hey, got to do what you got to do. So that's the kind of stuff I'm going to start doing, like supplementing those things into the meals. And that's going to accomplish, if anything, using those foods are going to lower inflammation because I'm trying to cram less volume into my stomach. Hunger signals and stuff are still going to be low because it's just your body's hunger signals are responding to the fact that you're eating, 7,000 calories. It's not just responding to the volume of food that's coming into your stomach. So, that's what I'm going to do is start just adding those things in slowly but surely. And then, I kind of, and over time, if, truthfully, if the intake gets high enough, it might be a larger percentage. Maybe it was only 10% of my meal before was those types of things. Now maybe it's like half of my meal. So like I eat, like my meals huge. It's like 250 carbs or 300 grams of carbs in a meal. I'm doing like 150 grams of carbs from Cardarine. I'm doing like 150 grams of carbs from rice or whatever, So that ratio gets a little more skewed as I go on, and because again, and the person that's asking, like we were talking about this or before, it's like it really just becomes caloric warfare at that point. I got to figure out like what can I eat that gets all my calories in, meets my micronutrient bases, doesn't wreck my gut, and isn't like highly inflammatory. What doesn't wreck your gut is probably not creating a lot of inflammation, so that's kind of a given. But yeah, that's the basis of it, right? So other things too, like consider, you're probably not going to have enough stomach acid to digest 7,000 calories, or a lot of people won't. Adding in betaine HCl and ramping up and adding in with your meals and ramping up slowly over time to increase that acidic environment to digest that massive amount of food. Getting a lot of like burps and stuff, that's some signs that you may be low in stomach acid, you may be low in bile. We can start adding TUDCA in. We can start adding D-limonene in, ones that I use. So yeah, those things are going to help with like overall gastric and intestinal, like all these juices and stuff that we need to actually digest things. You might need you're going to need these things probably at some point if you really pushing, like I'm talking really pushing. I'm not saying like 6,000 calories might be okay for one person, but another person that might be like ridiculous amount of food and they need that gastric support. So it's obviously relevant to the person, but there's no like absolute number where you're just gonna be dying from food. But yeah, but just think like insulin sensitivity, inflammation would be a driver of insulin resistance, like kind of indirectly. So if you're choosing things that digest well and not just trying to stuff 90,000 grams of rice into your stomach, you're creating less inflammation, you're creating less insulin resistance, okay? Better nutrient absorption, all right? So there is some trade-off with those foods. You can't just think of it as like, this is a good whole food, this is a bad processed food. Generally, I'm gonna go good whole food. That's my thing, that's what I like, that's what I recommend to clients. But bad processed food has its place, and bad processed food might also benefit me from an intestinal standpoint. Now, like I said, I'm not looking at foods that have 900,000 ingredients in them and tons of like vegetable oils and canola oils, like 20 grams of canola oil in there that's all going to oxidize and all this shit. Like, not that stuff. That's still relatively simple ingredient wise. It's just easier to get down. Okay, so that's kind of how I like to think about it. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. But yeah, that's how I said that percentage starts to shift. All right. How many packs of unfiltered cigarettes would you recommend for an average 280-pound bodybuilder? This is because if you guys are on my YouTube and not on my Facebook or Instagram, I used a picture of Marcus Rule smoking cigarettes. So I would say at least a pack and a half. Well, no, I'd say probably just a pack a day. Once you hit 300 pounds, pack and a half. And I like how I said average 280-pound bodybuilder, like 280-pound bodybuilders average. Once you hit like 240, you should probably start with like a half pack. Hit 280 is like a pack. Once you're breaking 300, 3 bills, it's whatever you need. 2 packs, 3 packs, carton a day, whatever you got to do. All right. These are funny ones for you guys. So, how many times should you shit yourself per off season to know you're pushing hard enough? Specifically, not shit yourself training, not shit yourself just sitting here like I am now. Shit yourself whilst sleeping. Now, I've experienced this, pushing food so hard that I'm woken up in the middle of the night out of a sleep because I have to shit so bad. I've actually had this not super often, but it does happen. So this is a thing. If you've never had that happen, probably haven't ever pushed yourself to the ultimate limit of food. If you're waking up out of your sleep because you're going to shit in the bed. So, just a tip. If you're not there, you should probably eat more. God. Okay. Couple more serious ones. And we'll round it out. Digestion issues, acid reflux, no appetite, mainly from off-season growth phase where food is very high, ways to fix, or good supplement to mix to combat. I know this is usually very personalized, but I just kind of run out of options. Well, I can tell you, just giving you a really general idea. A lot of the time when food's very high, it's a lack of acid. Okay, you just, like I said above, you just don't have enough acid to digest the food. Very first thing I would probably try here is betaine HCl. Any brand. Most of the brands are like 600 to 700 milligrams per capsule. They have pepsin in there, a lot of them, which is fine. But yeah, like 600 to 700 milligrams a capsule. Start at 1 capsule per meal. Every meal, see how you feel, and see if your appetite comes up, see if you're like digesting transit time before, like between meals, like feels like it's digesting quicker from meal to meal. If not, if you need more relief, go to 2, go to 3, go to 4, go to 5. Like I would say go, if you're really hammering food, like I know I'll go as high as 6 caps per meal when food's like peaked out. And then just when I bring food down in a mini cut or contest prep, I just slowly bring them back out till I don't have any anymore because I just don't need them. Okay. But yeah, I would just start at 1 and kind of ramp up, and depending on like what kind of relief you get, that's probably where I would start. Okay. That's that's not always the issue, but like 9 times out of 10, that's the issue. All right. For how long did you maintain a very lean physique that your test levels, did not recover while being natural? What timeline to expect generally so that your T levels get back to baseline? This individual must have listened to like somewhere I talked about my testosterone levels. So this was before I was prescribed hormone replacement. Timeline, it was pretty long, honestly. It probably was like few years, I would say. Like there was literally probably almost year. Shit. I bet you it was a year. I bet you it was like a whole year at least that I had visibly striated glutes as a natural. And I was pretty lean for there was probably, the whole thing was multiple years. It was probably 2.5, 3 years. And what was funny, well, not funny, but what happened was, general things to recover would be regain some body fat, eat more food, back off training, blah, blah, blah. So originally I had my test levels checked when they were suspected they were low, and they were, okay. And doing things to recover, I actually kept going down. So my production was just shot. And I was also not getting a lot of signaling either. So like my LH was, LH and FSH were lower and all this. I mean, I was just like, I was shot. Like it wasn't going to come back at that point. So that's not the norm, but generally, like you asked how long to bring them back up. I mean, a lot of the studies and stuff are showing different time periods, but I would say at least like 6 months you should be back up pretty much normal test levels. If you dieted down really hard and got very lean for a contest or photo shoot or whatever, you should be back to normal by then or before, depending on what you're doing. If you reverse dieted well and you brought food up pretty quick and you regained some body fat, and that's assuming also that you're not like chronically overtrained still and really overstressed, because a high cortisol and this inverse relationship with stress and testosterone levels, that can have a negative benefit. So keep that in mind. You can't just eat more and gain a little bit of body fat and think it's all going to come back. You have to lower total stress load too. So, yeah. All right, guys. I thought I had one more, and I am just not seeing it. And it's not bringing me back to it either. Let me look here. Let's go back to my front of my page. It says that Ian Valier dropped a comment in here, which I would imagine would be about either the cigarettes or the shitting yourself, if I had to guess. So I don't see it though. He must have deleted it. Okay, so I think that's it. We'll talk to you guys next time.